Right, this coming weekend, we've got another UFC fight night. This one's in Paris and it's headlined by Nassourdine Imavov taking on Caio Borralho. This is my main card. Quick picks. So kicking off the main card, we have Faraz Ziem taking on Caio Fernandez. Not sure I said his name correctly. You know, his first name spelled K-A-U-E, but we're going to call him Fernandez. Caio Fernandez has been in the UFC. He's had 2 fights so far and he's won both of them. He defeated Guram Kutseladze and stopped Mohamed Yahya. But Ziem, he's been in the UFC for quite some time now, since 2019. He's come up short a few times against the likes of Terence McKinney, but that's a do-or-die sort of matchup. But then he has also stopped Matt Frevola, so that was a great victory for Faraz Ziem. And I'm going to favour Ziem in this matchup. You know, he's the taller guy, he's 6'1", and he's got a 75-inch reach, whilst Fernandez, 5'8", and 73-inch reach. So not too much difference in the reach aspect, but he's got to overcome that height discrepancy. Can he get past the sort of the void, as Mighty Mouse likes to call it? Can he close the distance and get in close to Ziem? I'm not too sure. I think Ziem's going to use his clean striking and keep him on the end of his punches and his kicks, and he's going to get the victory in this matchup. Next up, we have Modestas Bukauskas taking on Paul Craig. This is an interesting fight for me. You know, both guys rep the UK. Modestas Lithuanian born, but he also reps the UK. Obviously, Paul Craig from Scotland, repping Britain as well. But I always like watching Paul Craig fight. He always looks and creates an interesting stylistic matchup no matter who his opponent is. Obviously, he favours the ground game. His striking's not the best. I'm sure he's not the last to admit it. You know, it's something he's needed to work on, and sometimes he's made it work and he's been able to let him go a bit. He's got better with the kicks, but he's always looks a bit nervous when the fight's standing, I'll be honest. Whilst Modestas Bukauskas, he's a clean striker, he's a measured striker. He takes his time and he methodically tries to break people down and pick them off as and when he can. So I'm going to favour Modestas Bukauskas in this matchup. You know, he's on a 3-fight win streak, whilst Paul Craig, he had a draw / no contest last time out. And prior to that, he's had 3-fight losing skid. So it's a tough time for Paul Craig. And I'm going to lean towards Modestas Bukauskas to continue his win streak and get the victory in this matchup. Next up, we have the Zulu Warrior, Baloji Oki. Baloji, not too sure. But he's taking on Mason Jones. Bit of a coin flip, this one. Not too sure. This could go either way, if I'm being honest. But I am leaning towards Mason Jones. You know, not too much difference between the tail of the tape on the two. You know, you got 29 years of age to 30, both 5'8", and a 73 and a 74-inch reach. So not too much difference between the two in that aspect. But Mason Jones, he's gone 2-2 and 1 no contest over 2 stints in the UFC. And Oki is currently 2-1 in the UFC. But Mason Jones went 12-0 in Cage Warriors, whilst Oki, I'm not too sure about the promotions that he's been fighting in. You know, Atomic 1, Levels Fight League 4. I don't think they're on the same level of Cage Warriors. You're not going to be fighting the same level of opposition that Mason Jones would have faced. So I'm going to favour the experience of Mason Jones to be able to get the job done against Oki. You know, he's also 16-2 and Oki 10-2. So not too much difference there, but I just think the level of opposition and experience that Mason Jones would have gained from having them matchups is what's going to get him through this fight and be able to navigate his way through to find a victory against the Zulu Warrior. So the co-main event, you got the God of War, Benoit Saint Denis. He's taking on Mauricio Ruffi. This is a striker's delight. How do we see this one playing out? You got Benoit Saint Denis, who's bounced back from his 2 losses to Dustin Poirier and Renato Moicano with a victory over Kyle Propelek, whilst Mauricio Ruffi, he's won all 3 fights in the UFC. Last time out with that spinning heel kick against Bobby King Green, and he sent him to the Shadow Realm. So it's a bit of a tricky matchup, this. You got the God of War, he's going to march forward and he's going to look to throw bombs. He's going to look to mix in the kicks as well, but he really utilises the hands and he throws and he hits hard, whilst Mauricio Ruffi's very light on his feet. He's very bladed, sort of early days Conor McGregor-esque, shall we say, and he mixes in all aspects of the striking very well. He throws in some things that we've never seen at times, you know, but he's a tricky level striker, let's just put it that way. Can Benoit Saint Denis figure him out and find his timing and find his range against someone who stands, like I said, very long, very bladed? They're not too different in the sort of tail of the tape aspect when you look at the stats. You know, both guys 5'9" and 73-inch reach for Benoit Saint Denis, only a 2-inch reach disadvantage against Mauricio Ruffi. But I think it's going to look a bit different when they're in there due to the stances. And I just think the trickiness of Mauricio Ruffi is going to make it difficult for Benoit Saint Denis to find that timing and find his range and be able to land on him. And he's got to try and sort of corral him against the octagon, against the cage, to sort of cut off the space for Mauricio Ruffi to work. And I just think he's going to struggle to do that. Maybe if he can get it to the later rounds and Mauricio Ruffi doesn't move as much, then he might be able to find a finish there. But I am favouring Mauricio Ruffi to, you know, pick him off at will, pick him off at range, and potentially get a finish, because, you know, he is a high-level striker and he does look to find these sort of mad finishes when he can. And I'm going to favour Mauricio Ruffi to get the job done and potentially get a finish in this fight. Then we have the main event. Nassourdine Imavov is taking on Caio Borralho. How do we see this one going? If I'm being honest, I'm favouring Imavov. I just think he's got more paths to victory. Obviously, we saw last time out, he knocked out Israel Adesanya, and that took me by surprise, if I'm being honest. Really didn't see that coming. But he's also very skilled in the grappling, whether he wants to push you up against the fence and kind of nullify your attacks, slow the fight down, and maybe wear on his opponent a bit, or he can take it to the ground and, you know, look for submissions or utilize the ground and pound and try to get a finish that way. Whilst Borralho, I think his best path to victory is to dictate how the fight takes place, where it takes place. You know, he's got to march forward, not take a backward step, and really let the striking go and let the hands go, throw in the kicks as well. And that's probably his best path to victory, is to hurt Imavov and get him on the ropes, back him up against the cage and let them hands go. And that could happen, but if I'm, like I said, if I'm being honest, I just favour Imavov. He's good enough with the striking to maybe hold his own against Borralho and utilise the range. Both guys are pretty tall, you know. There's not too much difference between them in the tail of the tape. So, you know, it's going to be an interesting matchup if it stays on the feet. But I think Imavov he's very measured and he's not going to take too many risks against a striker like Borralho. So I think he's going to use the striking and look to, like I said, either push him up against the fence, slow Borralho down, wear on him a little bit. If he can get it to the ground, then perfect for him. But I think he's going to play it safe on the feet, pop shot ones and twos, and then look to, like I said, get him up against the fence or take him down. And I can see that being his best path to victory. So I'm favouring Imavov in this matchup to get the job done at UFC Paris. Let me know your thoughts on the main card, how you see these fights playing out. How do you see the main event playing out most of all? So drop me a comment with your thoughts on the card and what you think of the matchups. And also make sure you're following the page, stay up to date with any sort of fun MMA videos, my thoughts, picks, whatnot, MMA news, all of that. So make sure you're following the page and drop me a comment. Enjoy the fights. Oh, last thing, UK fans, it's UFC Paris. I think it's 5 o'clock prelims, 8 o'clock main card. No late one for us again. Buzz in. But yeah, follow the page, drop me a comment. See you in the next one. Peace.